Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions and Brave Kids Books, where we have a mission to wake the world up to what's possible for healing, one brave word at a time. And here today to help me with that mission are some of the most amazing authors of a new book that we have coming out. It's called The Life-Changing Power of Self-Love, an Essential Guide. Yes, I know. I want to clap every time I hear the title too. A huge thank you goes to our lead author, Tina Green. And before I introduce these amazing women to you today, I want to say that thank you. Tina, your mission was huge for this book. You brought together a stellar cast of authors who are really stepping up to share these vulnerable stories. This is world-changing work in this book, and I'm so grateful to you for your mission and to partner with you in bringing these brave words into the world. So who do I have in my Zoom room? Holly Rapport is the founder and CEO of Hollywell, a holistic health coaching and healing organization where independent women come to heal, grow, and thrive. Jane Jakova Feld is a journalist and content writer who writes and manages projects on topics ranging from health to business to celebrity profiles. Her work has been featured in places like the New York Times, Philadelphia Inquirer, and the Journal News. And she served as the executive editor of the SJ magazine that has a focus on women's empowerment. Kim Collins is with us. She's a medicine woman of over 25 years, focusing her work on Amazonian medicines and practices as a shaman apprentice. All right, I'm read that right. As a shaman apprentice in the Shipibo Kanibo lineage. You guys are testing me today. An energy healer and ceremonial facilitator. I'll let Kim correct that later if she needs to. Madrone Khalil has her PhD in communication studies and is the founder of Taproot Journeys LLC, where she supports clients as a certified end-of-life doula, death and grief coach, ceremonialist, educator, facilitator of threshold circles, and as a certified breathwork facilitator. Y'all, I got some power in this Zoom room today, and I cannot wait to share these stories and these women with you. So, Holly, you're going to start the party off. Tell us about your amazing chapter.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, Laura. I so appreciate it. So my chapter is chapter 6, which is titled Single, Child-Free, or Childless Women, the Transformative Power of Loving Yourself First. And it's really my personal story speaking to my tribe of women who have either chosen to not have children or tried and could not bear children for whatever reason. Or folks that are kind of in the middle space, like me, in that liminal space of kind of not feeling like I chose necessarily, but because of certain circumstances that I go into in the book, this is where I am today, and really celebrating that journey. I do talk about some of the grief, working through some of my grief and coming through it with joy and celebration.
This is going to sound funny, but I had a conversation and we were talking about you over the weekend, because I won't call the friend out right this second publicly, but we were talking about this topic, and she turned to me and she's just like, I'm glad I didn't have kids. Like, I didn't never got that feeling. Like, I am so happy right now in my life being single and childless and all the things. And I'm like, yeah, you got to read Holly's chapter. It was great. What else do you want to tell women about that in terms of what they're feeling inside about it?
I'm so touched, Laura. Thank you so much. That's beautiful. Just that we are important in this world, that we have a right to be seen and heard. Just because we didn't give birth and follow society's rules, it's quite a rebellious act, actually, to be to be single and child-free in this world, particularly in America, where we're really told to take a certain path as women. And if you don't, you're othered or ostracized. I mean, I walk into every party. Well, if I have a boyfriend at the time, I don't walk in alone, but on and off, I have walked in, to every party alone, I went to a baby shower last weekend, and there were partners there, and I was by myself, and maneuvering through life in that way, feeling othered and ostracized. I'm really done with those feelings, and I want to serve my tribe and really help women feel loved and seen and heard is really, really my passion. All women. I mean, there are women who now their kids are out of the house, and they feel alone and lonely, and they want to reconnect. So really building community for women, particularly women who are feeling othered and ostracized, because we deserve as much love and peace as everyone else.
For sure. Thank you, Holly. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Jane, tell us about your amazing chapter.
Oh, thank you, Laura. Tough to go after Holly, my dear friend for many years. My chapter is The Teen Diaries, Unearthing the Past to Write Myself to Healing. I'm a journalist. I've always considered myself a writer, and I feel like I've had writer's block for a long time. It's always been very easy for me to connect to other people's stories, and I've long wondered why I haven't done more of my own writing. And I started with this. Well, I've had my diaries throughout my life, just in my house forever, and I've always wondered why. Why do I still keep these? Because I was afraid to open them, really. And I had a tragedy in my life. My son died in 2021, my oldest son. And that's when I really started writing more seriously, writing to heal. And I started thinking about these diaries that I had and what they were still doing here, and opening them up and reading them was a way to healing. It was a way to self-love. I didn't know I was going to write a chapter about self-love at the time, but going into my past and reading these diaries and embracing who I was then with the wisdom of today has really helped me get past some grief and know myself more to write more powerfully.
Well, I'm a fan of writing and journaling and all the things, especially writing as a healing process. And I guess there are some people in my world who would say, oh, well, I never wanted to write things down because I was always afraid that somebody would read it, and here you are so many years later, having kept everything. What would you say to that person?
My teenage self?
Well, the person who's like, doesn't want to
Oh.
write it down because they're afraid, you know?
Well, I think it's a two-part process. Writing it down at the time helps you to sort out your feelings. And then when you're revisiting this decades later, it just helps you realize where your journey has gone, because you are that person, but you're not that person anymore. And it just helps to synthesize who you are.
Yeah, I agree. It's a profound awareness process, and you can learn about yourself in ways you never realized by this. I'm so glad I kept all of mine. And periodically I'll go back to them just for a little me time. And when I'm feeling like I need to dive in there, it really is a powerful thing. Jane, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Kim, your turn. Tell us about your chapter.
Well, my chapter is chapter number 4, and it's called Calling Home the Queen Within: How Breast Cancer Became My Greatest Teacher. When I speak of the term queen, I'm speaking of it from a sense of the queen archetype, the power within. My whole ethos and actually, since I can remember from age of 5, I've always had the passion or path of helping others, to call on that power. And, when I was young and I didn't know what it really was, I was just giving love. So I was giving a lot of love, a lot of myself. And it wasn't until breast cancer, which now has been 12 or 13 years ago, that I actually stopped for a moment after being a healer and doing that type of work for so long, that I had not stopped to give back to myself. So it wasn't until that great teacher, as we know, traumas and disease and deaths and life in general can be the greatest teacher for you. And breast cancer was that for me. It was that wake up call that showed me to trust myself. I did it healing my cancer in untraditional means. I did it completely holistic, with a chagrin to my doctors, of course. They told me I would be back in 6 months, with it being in a bad situation. And that was actually the total opposite case. So my company, called Own Your Own Health, kind of ties in with that, like own your own power, own your own source, own your own truth, own your own ability. We are our greatest resource for our own health, our own mental health, our own spiritual health, all of it, the whole package. So at that point in my life, my world and my devotion and my path, a little bit diverted into just a higher calling for me, because I stepped into that power of my own.
Not everybody can take a disease, an illness, or other trauma or tragedy and call it a teacher. And I think it takes a badass, and all of you are that, because that is essentially what you're doing. You're showing people how these things can be a teacher, in someone's life. And you do that so brilliantly with your cancer story. What would you say to somebody who isn't quite there yet? Like, teacher, are you kidding me? This is the worst thing ever, right? And we have that. I know you have a powerful message for that person.
Really, it's about stepping into your self-worth. You are good enough. You are good enough to start taking care of yourself in the way that you've always wanted to. You are good enough to trust yourself. Your self-worth has always been there. Let's get back to that, right? Let's find the path back to that. And that starts with taking care of yourself in the means and the way that you want and that is possible. So keeping the eye on the prize of being in the moment. Every day is a new day. Every day is a new step towards that self-worth, self-love, self-empowerment of, no one else is going to do this for me, because no one else really can. It takes that bravery to step in to your fullest power. And that can be scary, for sure, when you're dealing with something as a life-threatening disease. But that's when we have our tools, right? And that's when we gather our tools and put them to good use.
Yes, 100%. Thank you for that. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Madrone, tell us about your amazing chapter.
Thank you so much, Laura. My chapter is chapter 7, You Are Not Broken, Finding Love in the Pain Points. And wow, you said we're in a powerful room, and it is an honor to be in a room with you women. I'm just finding myself relating to every single thing that you're saying, and trying not to cry with some of the little nuggets. So my chapter, it sounds sort of like Kim's, about managing pain in non-traditional ways. And Laura, you mentioned that I am an end-of-life doula, and I've always been interested in learning how to die well. And in many ways, dealing with my chronic pain has been a journey in dying off to things that I could not physically do, or ways that I could not be. Because when I was 16, I was just like at a volleyball practice, like you do in high school, and I did a tuck jump and I landed, and it was the most severe pain I'd ever felt. And I called my mom and I was like, I don't know, I think I need to go to a chiropractor, because that's what I thought of with backs. And so, yeah, I found out 8 months later I had degenerative discs in my low back, and 5% of the population had a back that bad at that age. And so now I'm 49, and when a doctor like looks at my MRI and I ask, well, how old is that back? They say that back's like a 65 or 70-year-old person. So I'm definitely a crone groupie, like I'm all about it. I understand. I understand because my body is a bit older than my spirit, which I think happens to a lot of us in various different ways. So, I found a lot of gifts, kind of like Kim was talking about, with struggling with my pain issues over my lifetime so far. And my chapter is specifically about how ceremony taught me about the difference between pain and suffering long before I was an end of life doula and knew those two things were like distinctly different. So yeah, it's been a huge deal for me to write about this because it's been part of my story for so long. And to go with what Jane was talking about, the actual writing it down has been huge for me. So I'm so grateful to Tina for the opportunity and to be able to be here with you all.
I think I told you while I was in the middle of it, but I resonated with your chapter a lot. And I had been going through one of the first sort of bouts of pain that I had had in my life that really like floored me, like laid me out. And so what that does to you mentally is a little much sometimes. And I love what you just said in terms of awareness, because y'all are dropping golden nuggets of awareness, and everything is awareness, right? You said the difference between pain and suffering. And I wonder what else you want to tell our listeners about that. Like, what's that one nugget you want them to know about the difference? Because the difference between these things could mean everything for somebody, life-changing.
Yeah, so this is what's so awesome about how we do these things in our life and then they kind of like fold in on each other. So in end of life doula training, we talk about this difference between pain and suffering. But when I was in ceremony, I learned how to shift my suffering through. That's where the "you are not broken" phrase comes from. I was on my knees saying, "You are not broken, you are not broken," because I had felt broken, and all the power of this ceremony helped me embody the fact that I could shift out of suffering. Suffering is a mental, unpleasant sensation of varying degrees. It's the emotional aspect of our pain. Our pain that we physically have is sometimes harder to shift, but we can shift the suffering. And so that really has helped me in my chronic pain journey, which is that, suffering is able to move, and I can change that, and ceremony can help with that. Sometimes I just have a pain day and it's like I this morning I woke up and I was like, are you kidding me? Today I have to get ready to talk about this. But that's just part of my life. And so again, with the gifts, I had to lay down, I had to stop and rest for a minute, and then I could keep going forward. And so there's just a million lessons in that, right? So my pain and so it's been a great teacher, and the suffering has been something I've been able to shift out of.
Yeah, a million lessons. Another badass here with me today. All four of these women, right? Able to change their perspective on something like that. That's definitely the game changer. I call them ninja moves of awareness because they are like that, right? And it takes practice to get to the ninja moves. You don't just have them. Okay, so Jane, I'm going to start with you for this next question. What's the most important thing you want people to know about self-love?
Self-love is something that I don't think a lot of women understand. They look at it as selfish, and that's not what it is. We have to care so much for so many people, and it's exhausting. Like, we need to love ourselves to love other people and to live our soul purpose. I have so many self-love practices, and some days my sorrow is so great. I need to take a step back and realize that loving myself is the only way I'm gonna be able to get out of this pain.
Yeah. Just that small thing. It's like I'm just teasing because this is profound stuff, you guys. Jane might make that sound simple, but it's so big. If you can really embrace the message she just gave you, you're going to have something that could change everything. I love asking the question, what if there's something you haven't learned yet that could change everything? I move into the world with this learner's mindset. I think it's a fun way to live. Kim, what would your version be? What's the most important thing you want people to know about self-love?
Well, to bring home what Jane just said, women have been conditioned and programmed, quite frankly, into feeling that we are the caregivers and we're giving and giving and giving our energy out. Love is the highest frequency. Love is the highest vibration. And if we are emptying our cup without filling it back up, then it's actually doing more harm, and we're not able to give as efficiently and authentically as we could. So, what I have learned is just going day by day, small steps, doing the smallest thing for yourself, ritual. I make almost everything in my life ritual, down to, how I prepare my food, or just wake up in the morning and have my tea. It's the small things that you can do for yourself. And you can hear the excuses all day long that I have kids or my job. We can always take 5 or 10 minutes at minimum to do the smallest things that just makes us happy. And sometimes that's just stillness. But it's a day-to-day practice because it never ends. This work never ends. The self-love, the well is there. So for us to tap into it just takes focus, takes waking up that day and committing to yourself, which then will reverberate to others in a more healthy way.
Yes. I love answering y'all with a yes with an exclamation point. Yes. Madrone, what's your version? What do you want people to know about self-love? What's that most important thing to you?
Yeah, so it's kind of maybe a different way of looking at it, but I'm a huge believer in the power of community weaving. So I would say that to work on your self-love, to reach out and lean into community of others, and in particular, if you're a woman identifying person, community of women, and the power of circle to transform. We've been gathering as humans in circle forever. And there's a huge power in that. And it helps us understand that we are not alone in whatever it is that we're facing. And this book does that too. And that's what's so awesome about it. It's like going into a community circle where everyone is sharing their stories. And my hope is that then with these practices that people have at the end of the chapters, that people will get together in community, and potentially, like the one I have in my chapter, you can do by yourself, or you could get together with a group of people and go through it together and really feel the power of being in community for your own self-love.
I love it. Community is everything. When it comes to self-love, it's a super booster. It's amazing. Okay, Holly, how are you going to round this one out? What's the most important thing you want people to know about self-love?
Well, all three of these wonderful ladies said similar things that I was thinking. So I appreciate that so much. And community is a huge part of my work. I mean, my website is hollywellcommunity.com. I mean, I'm all about community. So thank you, Madrone, for that. Self-love is loving yourself first. And I've witnessed my friends and family, particularly those with children, being a mother, what Kim was saying about the way we've been conditioned by society, by culture, to be the caregivers, to take care of everyone else before ourselves. the literature says it, the research says it, that you have to, when you get on an airplane, you're supposed to put the mask on first before you put it on your child. That is real life. We have to take care of ourselves first. And part of the practice I write about in my book is those small things that Kim was talking about. For example, that no is a complete sentence. What a life changer for me to finally understand that, right? As women, it took me so long to really grasp that and accept it as true for myself, particularly since my mother died when I was 27. And because I'm a highly sensitive empath, I have such a strong tendency to empathize and take care of others, whether it's going to holidays at a cousin's house where I really don't want to be there, or just saying yes to things that I know that are not aligned with who I am or who I want to be and how I want to spend my time. I finally, in my early 50s, have gotten to that point where no is a complete sentence. And it's like the greatest way to love myself, the truest way to put those boundaries. And I also talk about boundaries. That's another huge version, I think, of self-love is to create boundaries that align with your own morals and values, and not just to protect yourself, but to love yourself. Really, it's really about loving yourself first, so that you can love others. One of my favorite mantras is I love me and I love you.
Nice. Badass boundary setting and holding for me has been a really important version of self-love. I think it's also one of the most difficult to practice. So I want to say thank you to all four of you really for taking on the challenge of putting these vulnerable stories out there for people to read. And we need all of the voices. We need all of your voices. I'm in love with the collaborations because the way that you said it is going to be the way someone needs to hear it or read it. And when we put all of those stories and voices together, not in addition, the powerful medicine and practices you're laying out in the chapters, you guys, these books are such gifts to the world. And I can't wait for people to be reading your amazing book. So one of the things that has come up for me on this journey to self-love is some pretty difficult limiting beliefs. And I would imagine all of you have been on this part of the journey, and this has been a part of the challenge. I think this part of the journey, this understanding the self-sabotaging thoughts, is a game changer. When you understand it and you can change it, you can flip it. The awareness creates a choice. With awareness, you have everything. Right? Kim, tell us what one of your limiting beliefs has been in the past, and what's the today version of that statement. I'm going to model this for all of you for a second. In the past, for me, it's like, Laura, you're not smart enough to do that. And if you really want the ugly version, it sounded something like, you're an idiot. Ugh, right? Ugh, stab to the heart. So today, it's so much sexier and better, right? Like, you are not only smart enough, but you are connected in a way that you can make anything you want happen, right? And so that's my little shift. I want people to hear vulnerably maybe what that thought was, how you transformed it into what it is today. You ready, Kim?
Yeah. For me, I've reduced it to, because there's probably a lot, but the fear of being seen. And I outlined this in my chapter, in fact, because it was part of that calling home, that power back, that queen archetype back to me. All of my gifts and talents, which, are pretty wide at this point because I'm just open. I kind of would hide them or play them down in the past, because of that fear of being seen. I felt maybe attacked, and maybe that was my projection or mirroring of some sort when I was young. Because I was a really happy child, came from a happy family, no trauma there, and I was filled with joy, and I still am. But I felt like I had to dumb down that joy because people would get upset that I was happy. Would tell me, I remember as a teenager, tell me that it was fake, and I, would second guess myself. I would second guess my own joy, and it was real. So I felt like I had to dumb myself down for the longest time to not step up into my highest light because of other people's insecurities, because of other people's fears, because of other people's projections. And I allowed them to guide and direct me. I was horrible with boundaries back then. But now at 53, I have just stepped into fully, finally, with a lot of work, by the way, a lot of work, into that. What was that fear of being seen? Was it being the fear of being seen, or was it what would happen if I am seen? So I've with a lot of practice, spiritual practice, daily ritual, psychedelics, my shamanic path has opened me up to so much more portals and healing that I can ever imagine, to strip down that structure of the ego that gets in our way. So today I own 100% of it.
Full on joy. Bring it on.
That's self-love, right? Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. All right, Madrone, how about you? So, what's that limiting belief? How'd you transform it? What does it sound like today?
Yeah, so this is a great question. I would say that my limiting belief has been comparison. And, I love that Zen tarot card that talks about how the bamboo doesn't compare itself to the pine tree. I've had to repeat this to myself over many years. And I think that it has been transformed by self-love, right? By knowing that my magic is my own unique magic and that it's needed in the world. And the way that I got there, they call it a practice for a reason, right? Like we have a spiritual practice. It's because you have to literally keep practicing, which means you have to be okay falling down and learning from failure. In this world, we have a huge issue with, or a mistaken understanding about failure as something that's negative, when failure is actually the best way that we learn. And I wouldn't even say I've had these as failures, but I practice a lot in ceremony and my own practices in order to, really own, not in order to own my own magic in the world. And so that's been a huge journey for me in knocking down comparison to others and loving myself the way that I am. So thanks for the question.
Yeah, and in the writing world, I call it comparisonitis. Don't catch it. Don't catch comparisonitis.
Up on you too, just like life, it's that spiral path. You're like, okay, I've nailed this, I'm done. And then all of a sudden you get a little bit more and you have to go back to your tools, so.
Yes, you do. It pays to have a good toolkit. All right, Holly, how about you? So talk about that, and I recognize that, well, my list was there was more than one, believe me. I know we all have many. So, I'm challenging you to pick one. What was that one that you want to talk about? And then tell me about that transformation.
Great. Thank you. I agree. This is a fantastic question. The first one that I have many, I think all women do. The one that resonates the most right now is I am unworthy. And, as Madrone was wisely just saying, practicing within those limiting beliefs, right? For me, it's my monkey mind. My mind is very fast. I'm a very quick thinker. So sometimes I get wrapped up in the unworthiness feelings, particularly being in a society that values women childbearing. And if you don't give birth it's uncomfortable being in certain situations, in rooms with other women, particularly, which is interesting. Being a strong feminist and feeling othered by other women is confusing, and it makes, it sometimes made me feel quite unworthy. So really talking to myself, journaling, as Jane was talking about earlier, and Laura, of course, you as well, writing about these feelings of unworthiness and othering, and actually spending time coming back to myself. That's been a beautiful practice, really taking time out to decondition, and really understanding who I am as a human, as a woman, as a person in this world. And loving that person and caring for that person very gently. Also, I've learned through practice about being more gentle with myself and kind of growing the feelings of worthiness. And it is daily, Madrone. I mean, it's hourly sometimes. And I think there's also a facade, particularly in American culture. We want everything to happen very quickly. This is a lifelong practice. These are lifelong, what we're talking about today and what we talk about in the book. It doesn't happen overnight. And we also, I think a lot of us healers and coaches and teachers, there's sometimes a feeling that we're at that high level, that we're there, we don't have to do it anymore. And that's also so not true. We're also teaching ourselves and learning from others and sharing in community and constantly growing. So I think feeling unworthy is very common. And I look forward to serving women and helping them grow their own love for themselves, because it does take time.
It does. And don't be scared of that, y'all. It is what it is in the moment that it is. And you can deal with that moment if you can stay in the moment, and you don't have to make it mean anything. And we get in trouble a little bit with these things that are happening. Jane, tell me your version of this. So what's the limiting belief for you? What's the version of it now? Like, how did you get from there to there?
Well, what I realized reading my teenage journals is that imposter syndrome has plagued me my whole life. I always wanted to be a writer and was brimming with ideas, and I was emotionally blunted. I didn't trust myself, and in tragedy, in having so much pain, when I realized that I have to sit with my pain and explore it authentically and not be afraid of it, that's where my voice comes from, because I can't be afraid of everything swirling in my brain. And we're in this culture where we try to avoid what's unpleasant. It's everywhere, and people are uncomfortable with pain and dealing with what's unpleasant. But really, that's where great thoughts come from, just sitting with your pain and journaling about it and letting it guide you.
Yes. Oh my goodness. One of the gals on the interview earlier today said all the moments are sacred, all of them, the pain and the joy. So as soon as you realize you are surrounded with moments of opportunity, and it doesn't really matter, how they feel, you're just judging the feeling bad or good, but they're all sacred, like sacred opportunities. I love living my life like that. I have one last question for all of you, and we've been talking about this the whole time. Awareness is a lifelong practice. You've heard it a few times today. Getting to the point that you can fall in love with yourself can be difficult. So, Madrone, I want you to give our listeners an easy entry point, something simple they can start with to hop on the journey. My version would be write it down, get it in your journal. It really is that simple for me. That's my awareness tool that I use every day, probably multiple times a day sometimes. What's your advice for that hop on an easy entry point into this awareness practice?
So that's also interesting question, because what's easy for me may not be easy for everyone. So what I would do would be to give voice to, because I'm a verbal processor, so I would give voice to what's the issue for me, second to writing it down. And I think that out of that comes, in that verbal processing, loving the journey, not just the destination. So finding someone that you can sit in the mess with, that you trust, I think allows us to embrace that beginner's mind in a comfortable way. So I believe that, get into that throat chakra, use the voice, and find someone that can have your back literally as you use that voice. So.
Yes, I love it. Write it down, speak it out. Holly, what else should they do?
I commune with Mother Nature, get outside,
Yes.
get outside, put down the technology and get outside. And I think everyone's version of that is different. I live at the beach now, so putting my feet in the sand as much as I can, if it's once a day, even better, taking a walk, hugging a tree, getting that energy. I hug trees, Madrone. Just getting out in the fresh air is so good for the body, mind, and spirit. And it just opens you up to source and to yourself and to surprises. You never know
Yes.
what's coming when you're outside.
The nature connection. I say, grab a friend, take your journals, go out into the beach, speak it out, write it down, and put your feet in the sand. We got 3 all together. So Jane, what do you want to add to this?
Well, I would have gone with the journal writing.
You can give us a particular kind if you want. I know journaling is good.
Well, no, but also the intention. Just starting your day with your intention to love yourself and to be kind to yourself, because things get busy really fast, and then our minds start doubting ourselves. And if we start our day knowing that we are loved by the world, and that we're here for a reason, and we need to be kind to ourselves, I think it just starts the day better and helps you when the shit hits the fan.
For sure. For sure. Kindness. Rain it all down upon yourself first with that intention, first thing in the morning, starting the day like that. That's a game-changing miracle morning. Y'all have your miracle mornings, right? That's a really, really important piece of it. All right, Kim, you're gonna close out the party today. Tell us an easy entry point for the listeners. How can they hop on this awareness journey?
Well, I'm going to echo Holly, because the first thing I thought of would be Mother Nature. That's been my source for the connection and hopping on this train. The mother has been crying for us. It is evident. And going back to the mother, to me, is the most important thing. But since that's been spoken, another thing that came to mind is, well, there's so many obvious things that might seem obvious because they work. And one is meditation. I think that meditation, no matter how you do it, people get so tied up with the how, and am I doing this right or wrong, and I can't do this. Meditation has so many forms. One is getting out in Mother Nature. You can walk, you can write is a form, writing is a form of meditation. Washing your dishes can be a form of meditation. Really just slowing down, slowing that mind. And to add to that real quick, since I'm closing it out. Watch what you put in your brain, because that ties into the meditation. Let's watch what we are watching. Like change the habits. And a simple, easy way I find to do that is to be careful of what I watch on TV, to be careful of what I read on the internet. Take time away from that. Be very careful of what you are feeding your mind, because that is as important as what you feed your body.
Yeah, no doubt. I ditched my television 8 years ago. No cable, no television. I get some flack from my family about not being informed enough, but I'm informed enough, One deep breath, that could be your easy entry point today, y'all. One big rib expanding deep breath, clearing your mind, can bring you into the moment and into a practice that could change things for you, even that easily. Sometimes I turn on my favorite song and that's my entry point. And there are so many ways to connect like that. Oh my goodness. Madrone, Holly, Jane, Kim, thank you so much for what you do in the world and for being here to share it with everyone today. Y'all, I know you heard things today that gave you the goosebumps, that you resonated with. Maybe you want to carry on the conversation. This group of authors is so much more. This is so much more than a book. This is a generous community. So drop on down to the show notes. I've hooked all of the women up with their websites, their links, the things that they have going on. And you're going to want to take a little exploration there, a little clicking exploration, see what they're up to in the world. They're very generously there for you to carry on that conversation, answer a question, take the next step on this sometimes impossible feeling journey that we're all on. And listeners, please remember to join us for our book launch party, because we're going to have all the authors of The Life-Changing Power of Self-Love, November 13th, 12 noon. We're going to be on the Brave Healer Productions Facebook page, but you can join us on Zoom too. And I have got the info down below about that. And if you happen to be listening to this interview anytime after the 13th of November, that just means you got to get over to Amazon and grab your copy of this amazing book. So lastly today, everyone, remember, your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it is time to be brave. Thank you, ladies. See you next time, everyone.
Thank you, Laura.